The Reuters news agency is reporting that Hamas has presented mediators in Qatar with a ceasefire proposal for Gaza. The first stage would see the release of women, children, elderly hostages, and the sick in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Hamas said a permanent ceasefire date and a deadline for the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip could be agreed after the first stage. Earlier, I spoke to DW correspondent Tania Krämer. I asked her about Israel's reaction to this proposed ceasefire by Hamas.
Well, that's right. I mean, we heard last night from the Israeli media talking about this proposal by Hamas had created some cautious optimism. As you said, there are these different stages. We've heard about this before. First, the elderly women, children, and some of the hostages that are ill would be released in exchange for a certain number of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. But there's still the sticking points. Hamas is saying they want to see a full end to the war, a permanent ceasefire, as well as from Gaza, and we are not sure whether Israel has been given a list of the surviving hostages. That was their demand. And late last night, there was a statement by the Prime Minister's office coming out shortly before midnight, saying basically that Hamas is continuing holding unrealistic demands. However, we understand that this proposal will be submitted to the War Cabinet and the wider Security Cabinet later today. It's expected that there is a meeting, and there was also a meeting yesterday with representatives of the families, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said afterwards that the pressure from Qatar on Hamas is starting to work. But again, we've been at this point many times before, so we have to wait and see what is happening next.
Now, this Hamas proposal, Tania, comes as the Israeli government is facing growing criticism over the way it's prosecuting the war in Gaza. U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has taken the extraordinary step of calling for new elections in Israel. Is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu likely to change his course given this pressure, Tania?
Well, this has been seen here really as the sharpest criticism yet of an American official. This is, of course, after a lot of back and forth between the Biden administration and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And Mr. Schumer saying that Netanyahu is actually part of the problem. And that was here, the reactions here were really widely reported in the media with Likud, that's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party, saying that Israel is an independent and proud democracy with an elected prime minister and not a banana republic, as they put it. But again, I don't think it will reflect, in a change of course in that sense. There's a wide support for the war in Gaza, but what we've seen here is a drop in popularity, a dramatic drop, we have to say, for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And there have been anti-government protests picking up in past weeks, also reflected in opinion polls saying that most of Israelis want to see an election rather sooner than later.
And that was DW's Tania Krämer in Jerusalem. Now, Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says that dozens of Palestinians have been killed and many more injured by Israeli forces while waiting for aid. Israel has denied allegations that it's attacking aid centers in the territory. This as the UN warns that Gaza is on the brink of famine. Currently, aid trucks are moving supplies from the Rafah and Kerem Shalom checkpoints, but there's growing pressure on Israel to allow more aid into the territory. Israel is blaming the UN for not distributing the aid. Well, our correspondent Tania Krämer went to the Kerem Shalom crossing to find out more.
These trucks are Gaza's lifeline. Kerem Shalom is one of two crossings where Israeli officials check for items they say could be used by Hamas, which is widely regarded as a terrorist organization. Then the supplies are driven back to enter Gaza via the Rafah crossing with Egypt. Aid agencies say it's this system that's acting as a bottleneck and helping push Palestinians towards starvation. Israel is facing increased pressure and international criticism for blocking aid into the Strip. Israeli officials insist this isn't the case and say that the real problem is that the UN and other international organizations aren't capable of distributing the supplies once they get to Gaza.
The problem is not on the Israeli side or the routes for humanitarian aid to come into Gaza. The problem, who will collect it and distribute it. And this is the main gap, because the UN haven't adjusted themselves to this humanitarian operation here in Gaza.
But UN officials say that's not true, and the number of trucks entering is far too low to meet the population's needs.
Before the crisis and the war started on the 7th of October, there was 500 or 600 trucks coming in a day. And since that time, people have had a massive, catastrophic humanitarian disaster upon them. So we need more entry points, one in the north, and we need other places for food to come into, rather than just the one crossing point at the moment.
Even once food does arrive, there's no guarantee it'll end up in the hands of hungry people. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry said on Thursday that this aid distribution centre in central Gaza had been hit by an Israeli attack.
We get the aid and we distribute it to people. The people needed to come to get their Ramadan meals. Today they hit the warehouse and burned all the aid, including the dates.
It's the second time in as many days that an aid site has been attacked, and a reminder that even as countries scramble to transport supplies to Gaza by air and sea, getting them there is only part of the struggle.
For more on this, I'm joined now by Hiba Tibi. She is Director of Care International Palestine and joins me from Ramallah in the West Bank. Thanks for being with us. Now, Israel and the UN are blaming each other right now for aid not getting where it's needed in Gaza. How do you see it?
Good morning. This is unfortunately a very difficult question to answer, but let me share with you what we are experiencing as an organization. There is a huge process, hectic one, heavy one, that is lengthy and that is complicated to allow for aid to enter to Gaza. And when the aid is entering Gaza, then you are faced with additional layer of difficulties, which is related to two things. The first one is the fuel to distribute the aid that is entering, and secondly, the safe environment that would allow the different teams to distribute the aid. And this is, of course, only I'm talking about the south and not even the north. In the north, the situation is even more difficult because there is a very difficult, very limited number of aid entry between the south and the north.
Now, some trucks managed to enter the north of the Gaza Strip yesterday, I understand, through a new road crossing. Do you think that crossing is going to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza?
Unfortunately, now we are hearing every day that we are losing children and people. Around, so far, 27 people died because of hunger and then starvation and dehydration. 23 out of them are babies and kids. We are expecting that the situation will become more difficult. Any aid that is entering Gaza is making a difference and is saving lives. However, if it continues to be limited in this way, if it's continued to be unclearly distributed, causing the fact that it becomes even more dangerous for people to access it, this will be very difficult, and we will see that the scale and the speed of deteriorating situation, we have the results of between January and February doubled. Then we will see the double of the double of the double over the next months, unfortunately.
Now, but there has been some progress in opening up new ways of delivering aid to Gaza. There's an aid ship right now, Open Arms, coming from Cyprus. It's just off the coast of Gaza, just offshore. Do you think aid deliveries by sea could make a difference?
We have been calling for aid through every possible point. What we are calling for, the easiest, the fastest, the most efficient way is to open the land crossing points. However, the other attempts, like for instance airdrops and also the aid through sea, are either too expensive. The port that is going to be established will take at least 60 days, and this is not going to correspond to the immediate need. And finally, it's not clear how it is going to be distributed. What we are trying to do, we are as humanitarian organizations want and ready to scale up the distribution of aid, making sure that those who are most vulnerable, women, elderly, people with disability, are receiving it, rather than leaving it in Gaza open for those who have the strength only to access it, and even those are in danger.
Now, we keep hearing reports of Gazans being killed while waiting for aid. What can be done to prevent that, Hiba?
There are different options. There are the forces that can be inside Gaza in the north to work on better distribution, better mechanisms for distribution. There are also the existence of humanitarian organizations. There is very limited number of organizations in the north working through Palestinian partners. So we are all moving now towards the south. For instance, my team is in the south. The global experts go to the south, to Rafah. There is no one to help distribute in the north. So the aid is literally taken to the north, those who can access it, and you can see that people are dying and because of starvation, they would go. And even after being shot, if there is a news that there is another aid truck entering Gaza, after 30 minutes, they would go because they don't have any option but that to receive the aid, to access food.
Extremely difficult. Hiba, thank you very much for talking with us. That was Hiba Tibi, Director of CARE International Palestine, speaking to us from Ramallah.
Thank you.